Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another layer by layer tutorial. In today's tutorial, we're going to take a look at making CAD animations in Fusion 360. So there are some really good tutorials out there on how to make kind of these basic animations that explode, these exploding animations for your projects. They work pretty well. The Sheikah pendant is probably one of my first ones where I made, and things are just kind of moving. The camera isn't moving yet, and individual pieces are just kind of exploding. So it's pretty cool. But however, this recent one I made was for the Joy controller project. This one's way more heavy. There's a lot of comparts that kind of split apart. You have groups of components that are actually moving, rotating, and then exploding. And then on top of all that, you have some camera movements. The camera is actually zooming out and then slightly orbiting. And then you have this loop thing. So a lot of different things going on here. I want to kind of make one for our latest project, which is the Boomy project. So this is my latest project. I haven't done any animations on it, and I'd like to kind of get that started. And I figured I'd do a layer by layer tutorial on how to get that started. But first, let's kind of take apart the Joy and just kind of look at the layers and stuff like that. So here we are in the animation workspace. I'm assuming you know the basics of animations. If not, I definitely check out the stuff on Autodesk Fusion's YouTube channel to get the kind of basics intro on how to kind of move things around. But let's take a look at it. So we zoom out, breaks apart, explodes, right? None of this was done with the auto explosion stuff. This was all done with manual movement. So there are some auto explosion stuff. And I actually would say don't use that. It doesn't really work that well. So let me go ahead and show you if we try that with Boomy. Now, one cool thing is that if you open the data panel and you scroll to your design and you share the public link, you basically get a browser preview of your design, right? That's really cool. You probably know about that. It looks like this. This is a pre-explosion that the browser, the Autodesk 360 website kind of automatically does for you. So it's a really cool way to kind of see how it can be exploded. And what I found, one of my observations is that this thing is a lot better than the desktop. So as I explode this out, take a look at Boomy's face. You can see that it's splitting apart fairly well. And a lot of it's following sort of a unified motion. It's all kind of splitting out and going at the same rate, and you can kind of zoom in, you can orbit around, and just to see how kind of lovely that is, right? Like there's definitely some sort of order to all this explosion. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't carry over to the desktop. When you do it, you would expect that if you do an auto explosion inside of the desktop, it would explode it in this exact same way, but it doesn't. So you kind of have to manually do it. So let's go to Fusion. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to go into the animation workspace. And I'm not going to record any of the view, so I have this turned off. So y'all know about that. Toggling the camera on and off is very important, and I always forget to do it. So that's why I'm going to talk about it. So make sure it's turned off. View is not recording. Great. My playhead's already set to like 2 seconds because that's how long of the duration I kind of want it to be. So you definitely want to select the thing first. I always forget to do that. So I'm selecting the master assembly. If you dive deep in there, you can see I have parts. Inside of parts, I have the parts. Inside a case, I have the pieces for the case, so on and so forth. So I'm going to do this top level master assembly, this guy here. Then I'm going to click on auto explode all the levels, because there are 2 options. You can do 1 level or all the levels. Obviously, you want to do all the levels. So it's going to take a while, a little bit, maybe like a half a minute or something, maybe less than that. But you can see my beach ball is spinning. Fusion's figuring out how to explode it, where to explode it, what to do. And it takes a little bit. I'm going to not speed this up just to show you. Okay, so that's how long it took. Not that long. You can see already in the layers that everything is out. So all the screws that I used and everything is individually broken out. But if we zoom out, you can look, and we can even minimize the timeline to get a better look at the canvas, is that as I'm exploding this out, it doesn't look at all like in the browser. Actually, some pieces aren't even moving. So if I zoom in, you can actually see that the buttons never move. Also, the speaker never moves. And there's some screws and stuff that don't move as well. So there's some things that aren't really moving. Everything isn't moving, and it just doesn't look as good as the desktop. And for whatever reason, there's like, see how it kind of slides down. There's no Actually, you can do a sequential explosion, but that doesn't really do anything. I don't know if that's a bug or something, but changing from one step to sequential, and you can't even really tell which one you have, which one is active. Nothing really changes. So I don't know if I'm doing it wrong there, but I found nothing really changes there. And it just doesn't look good, you know? The algorithm or whatever that this auto thing is working on, I don't think it's as good as the browser. One cool thing that I noticed is that there is a trailing thing now. I'm not sure if that's new or old or if it's been there, but there's this little button that says trail visibility. I can enable it or disable it. It was kind of a bug there. As you saw in the beginning, it was already there, but now it's completely gone. Now it's completely there. That's kind of neat. I might leave it. So let's say we want that. Hit OK. Open up our thing here, and you can see I kind of skipped a step. There was a duration. You did have a little thing here where these little markers that you can adjust the duration, but whatever. So you can see the animation. It just isn't as nice looking as the browser. It's just weird how this didn't even explode. So that's just one thing I want to note, that definitely make your design, preview your explosion first inside of the browser, inside of the A360 preview web browser app website thing. Sorry. And take a look at it, because it actually does a very good job of exploding it. It just gives you a good idea of how it can explode, not how it should explode, but that's kind of neat. So that's a good thing here. But none of this is what I want to use, so I guess I'm just going to Control-Z that and erase everything there. So let's get started with moving it. So, you got to give a good amount of thought onto what's the first frame? Like, what do you want to show? Do you want to show it in this orientation, or do you want to show it flat? So one of the cool things is you can use storyboards to figure out how you want to do it. So you can do different trial runs. So if you look at Joy is actually, I did 3 separate storyboards. So if we look at the first one, the first one actually shows the orientation in which Joy was designed. So I designed it top down. So this is how Joy works. I actually made it this way. So that's how I started off. So at storyboard 3, I actually start Joy completely upright. She's standing upright. And again, there's this weird bug here. If anyone on the A360 team is watching, there's a little bug here. You see how my screen is just like out there? Well, if I go to outside of the closing frame and into frame 00, it updates and fixes it. So the board is no longer outside of the case. It's this weird thing, I don't know, and so now it's not there, but whatever. So it's kind of weird, but as you can see, Joy is oriented in a different way than it was designed right off the bat. So maybe you want to think about that first, how the entire assembly is oriented, because if it's oriented top down, it's going to be a little bit harder to, when you're constrained orbitally, when you're orbit constrained and you're trying to orbit around it, it's a little bit difficult because it's like, it's facing the wrong plane, for example. So that's one thing you want to know. So for Boomy, I already have it oriented in the right spot where I can orbit this way freely and constrained. It's a constrained orbit. So that works okay. So one thing I want to do is, like, where do I want to start? Do I want to show Boomy's face first, or do I want to show the back cover? I think I want to show the back cover first. But I'm not too sure yet. So let's start with this way, because at some point I need to pull out all of the components that are inside of Boomy, and the best way to do that is to come out this way as opposed to coming out this way. So I'm a little bit weird. Maybe I can use the camera angle to like zoom this way and then pull it out, something like that. So it's very challenging to figure out, well, what should come out first, and not necessarily in the order that it's built or assembled, but in the way that it just shows you the best of order of operations sort of thing. So let's go ahead and break out Boomy. Let's open this up and click on the face. Here's a cool tip that I wish I knew early on, is to lock your pivot. So for example, I want to move the face out, and if I break it down, you can see that there's different pieces that make up the face. There's the face, and then the gray area, the base plate, which is black, and then the left and the right eyes. So what I want to do is I want to move this whole thing. But if I move it, I hit the M key, you'll notice that the set pivot is defaulted to the very corner here. And that's not very useful. If I want this thing to rotate, it's stuck to that, pivot. I want it to be in the center. So how do I get my pivot point to be in the center? Well, it's a little bit tricky. So before I set my keyframe animation and hit cancel, I'm going to go all the way to the closing frame because I don't want to generate any keyframes. I just want to set this up first. So one of the things I want to do first is actually turn off things that are not the face. So you saw I turned the cover off. We want to turn off everything that isn't the face because I need to reorient the pivot for this. And you notice that now there's a whole bunch of keyframes that got made. They're all off here. These are like visibility keyframes. And I know you can do that. There's no duration to them because it's just like saying off and on, but I can delete those. So we don't have to worry about that right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the face, hit the M key, and I want to set the pivot to be in the center, the dead center of this object, this entirety of this object. So the way to do that, I'm going to hit the set pivot icon, click on that. Now, what's super weird is that Fusion does a pretty good job of like figuring out these snap points. But if there's too many, Fusion's just glitching out all over the place. So no matter where I go, it's super weird. So what I want to do is like, just find somewhere. It really, if you have a complicated geometry, and it's like, well, I don't know how to fix it. But at some point when I'm not pointing at anything, it kind of, no, it doesn't really figure it out. I can't really get I'm not sure if that's exactly the center. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. So it's very finicky. So I'm going to hope that's the center. I'm going to click there. And then you look at it, eyeball it. I think that is the center. I hope that's the center. If I look at the front of Boomy's face, that looks pretty center to me. Now, I'm not sure if it is. There's no other way to really get it in the center than to hoping that it's good. But as long as you have something that's kind of simple, the backplate, for example, that's why I oriented to the backplate. But even to get to the backplate, I had to hide everything. So it's kind of a little bit weird. So now there's this new thing called pivot position unlocked. I'm going to lock it. And I'm going to hit OK. So now what's cool is that whenever I want to move Boomy, this entire component now has this set pivot memorized and locked. So that's really cool. So I haven't moved anything yet, so I'm going to hit OK. I want to get rid of these little visibility things. And I wish I could hold down Shift, to select all of them. I can. But sometimes it doesn't work, so let's go to it. Let me zoom in a little bit using the zoom in thing. And I can't do a marquee selection in there, so that sucks. But I want to Shift select these. And I can't, so I have to delete them one by one, like a savage. There we go. So now you notice I have nothing. Let's say I want to go to half of a second and I want to move the faceplate forward. So now that is selected, I'm going to hit M on my keyboard and take a look at that. Our set pivot is set to the center. Awesome. That's because I locked it. So that works really well. I'm going to have this come out a little bit. Hit enter, and then for some reason it says it's rotating. I didn't rotate anything. So let me delete it. That might be a bug. All right, so that works well. Now I want it to go, I'm going to advance to a second, and I'm going to select the face again. I'm going to move it down like that. And now I'm going to go to 1 minute and a half, or 1 second and a half. So 1.5 seconds. And then with the face selected, I'll hit M again, and then I'll do a rotate. So you can rotate it. And this is where it really was useful to set pivot to the centers, because now I can rotate to the center, not at a pivoted angle somewhere. So now I got that. So I can go here, here, and there. So that looks really good. And really what I want the start frame is probably going to be over here. So that's why I have the Boomy's face rotating. So that's one way to kind of go about kind of planning ahead of time and figuring out what kind of pivot do you want your components to be, your master component. Because remember, there's a bunch of components within the face. So now I want to explode stuff. So let's advance even further. Let's say 2 seconds, and let's start grabbing some of these things out. So I'm going to grab the eyes. I'm going to move those. And you notice that there's no set pivot for that one, but we don't really need to worry about rotation on the eyes. So I'm going to move those forward. I'll grab the gray features and then move that forward as well. And then I'll move the back base plate and move that as well. And if you're looking down at my timeline, notice that these are a little bit, why did it start at 1 second and not at 1.5 seconds? Now I'm not sure, but this is sort of a default thing. I can select with shift, hold down shift and then select the bottom, and then I can multi-select these guys, which is very handy. Right click, duration, and I can change the duration. You just put 0.5, hit enter, and it moves it all the way back there. So I have to shift, select, and then click and drag, and then move them to where I think makes sense. So that looks good. So let's kind of reorient ourselves and take a look at it. Pulls out, forward, and explodes inward. So that's kind of neat. I don't think we really need this. I don't think we need it to push out, so we can delete that. And now it'll just slide down and then rotate. A bit awkward there with the rotation because it's out there. As you can see, it goes from here to there. So we can change that, I think. Let's see if we can fix this. I would rather just delete it and then rotate it again because I don't feel like futzing around with the stuff. So maybe we go this way instead. So whatever orientation you want, maybe you want to go positive instead of negative, 180 degrees. It's up to you, whatever you feel is right. So that's probably easier, so it just rotates that way and explodes inwards. Explode. And explode. So it slides down now. So we can move these guys, all these guys. We can move them to the 0 right here. I like the little tooltip right beneath my thing here. It's not really helpful though. It's not showing me where the end is. I don't know where it is here. Oh, jeez, this really sucks. Sometimes this stuff really sucks, guys. I'm gonna say. I'm trying to move it by like 0.001 of a frame. There you go. Is that correct? I don't know. Is that the 0 starting point? Maybe. All right, so that looks good. So obviously this is gonna take a lot of time, and that's really what the name of the game is trying it out, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and using, I would definitely recommend using storyboards. Just click the plus button there and start it clean, or maybe even start from end position, previous or whatever. That's the last frame, the end of the last frame of this thing, and that works okay for getting multiple ideas out, which I'll probably end up doing. Definitely, if you want to take a look at this file, I have the links down below, so you can actually open this in your Fusion and then take a look at how this was assembled and put together. But it's really going to be specific to your design and your assembly and how you set it up. So a lot of the times I actually had a lot of weird problems with Joy where I would rotate the whole a bunch of things, and so you see how these screws are moving with the main assembly there, the top assembly. I had it to where it was rotating the opposite, and that was probably because it was a standalone object. So Fusion got confused, and some of the coordinates weren't like matching. It was very, very odd. So I got kind of lucky with this working out, but I had to futz with it quite a bit to do this. So I think with Boomy, I set it up a little bit better in the fact that like the face, for example, is a main component, and then there's sub-components inside of it. So it's like this component nesting that is really helpful while you're designing as opposed to after the fact. But anyway, that's just a kind of rundown, a couple of tips here and there on how I went about doing this. Is nowhere near done, and there's still a lot to do for it, but I figured I'd show you guys a little bit of the joy and a little bit of tips there. So if you guys have any cool tips and stuff on animating and anything else like that pertaining to the animation stuff inside of Fusion 360, let me know. There is some other good examples and stuff that I'll link below, some Instructables from some other awesome folks. But let me know if you find a good tutorial on animation. Let me know. I definitely want to dive deeper into this type of stuff, especially with these bigger assemblies. Let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.